Look, I'm about to tell you something that's going to sting like hell, but somebody needs to say it. That person you're holding on to, the one you're making excuses for at 2 a.m. while they're out living their best life without a second thought about you? Yeah, them. Walking away might be the most loving thing you can do for yourself. And here's the kicker. The ancient Stoics figured this out 2,000 years ago while sitting in togas, and we're over here with therapy apps and self-help books still getting it wrong. Wild, right? Today we're diving into 9 signs that scream, it's time to bounce, even when your heart's throwing a full-blown tantrum about it. Because here's what nobody tells you. Loving someone and tolerating their toxicity aren't the same thing. Marcus Aurelius didn't command Rome by letting people walk all over him, and Epictetus didn't survive slavery by accepting every relationship that came his way. These guys knew something we've forgotten, that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is close a door that's letting in nothing but cold wind and broken promises. So, buckle up, because we're about to get real uncomfortable real fast. And if you're already feeling defensive about someone in your life, that's probably your first sign, but we'll get to that. Sign number 1, they consistently disrespect your boundaries like they're suggestions at a buffet. Let's start with the big one, the red flag so massive it could cover a football field, boundary violations. Now, Epictetus had this brilliant concept. Some things are within our control, some things aren't. Your boundaries, totally in your control. Someone else's decision to respect them, that's on them. And when they repeatedly choose not to, that's your cue to exit stage left. Here's the thing about boundaries. They're not these mystical, complicated constructs that require a PhD to understand. Hey, please don't call me after 10 p.m. on weekdays isn't asking for the moon. I need you to stop criticizing my career choices isn't unreasonable. Don't share my personal information with others is pretty straightforward. But somehow, some people treat your boundaries like terms and conditions on a website, something to scroll past without reading and definitely not follow. The Stoics were obsessed with this idea of self-governance. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Translation, you can't control if someone's going to respect your needs, but you absolutely can control whether you stick around for the disrespect. And let's be crystal clear about what boundary crossing looks like, because it's sneaky. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's your friend who forgets you asked them not to bring up your ex every single time you hang out. It's the family member who keeps giving unsolicited advice about your life choices after you've asked them to stop approximately 7,000 times. It's the partner who says you're too sensitive every time you express a legitimate need. Death by 1,000 paper cuts, except each cut is them telling you that your needs don't matter. Here's where it gets interesting. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But you know what? When someone's stomping on your boundaries repeatedly, you're not imagining it. That suffering is real. And staying in that situation, that's on you, my friend. The Stoics were all about taking radical responsibility for your choices, which includes the choice to tolerate intolerable behavior. You know what's absolutely wild? We live in a culture that celebrates loyalty like it's the highest virtue. Ride or die, through thick and thin, never give up on people you love. All beautiful sentiments until you realize that loyalty without reciprocity is just self-destruction with better marketing. The Stoics would call this preferred indifference. Yeah, loyalty is great, but not at the expense of your fundamental well-being. Marcus Aurelius literally had friends plot against him, and you know what he did? He dealt with the threats and moved on. He didn't write in his diary, but maybe if I just explain my boundaries one more time, they'll stop trying to overthrow me. And here's the part that's going to make you squirm. If you're constantly explaining, defending, or justifying your boundaries to someone, that's not a misunderstanding. That's a power play. People who genuinely care about you don't need a TED Talk every time you express a need. They hear you the first time, maybe the second if they genuinely forgot, but the 15th time? Nah, they heard you. They just don't care. The really insidious part is how boundary crossers make you feel crazy for having boundaries in the first place. You're being dramatic. It's not that serious. You're overreacting. Suddenly, you're defending your right to basic respect like you're arguing a case in front of the Supreme Court. And that's exactly where they want you, so busy defending yourself that you forget you shouldn't have to. Seneca had this absolutely savage line. "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor."
Apply that to relationships. You're not asking for too much by wanting respect. They're offering too little by refusing to give it. Big difference. So, here's your gut check. Think about the last 5 times you set a boundary with this person. Did they respect it? Did they push back? Did they make you feel guilty for having it? Did they agree in the moment and then forget later? If you're keeping score of boundary violations like you're tracking baseball stats, Houston, we have a problem. Now here's where things get really spicy, because respecting your boundaries is just the appetizer. The main course? Whether they actually value your time and energy. And trust me, sign number 2 is about to separate the real ones from the time vampires.
Sign number 2. Your energy leaves the chat every single time you're around them. All right, let's talk about something the Stoics were absolutely obsessed with, energy management. Except they called it something way cooler, vital force, or pneuma. Marcus Aurelius understood that we've got a finite amount of this stuff each day, and how we spend it determines the quality of our entire existence. Now, imagine taking that precious resource and just setting it on fire every time you interact with one specific person. Fun, right? Here's the test, and it's so simple it's almost insulting. How do you feel after spending time with this person? Not during. During, we can convince ourselves of anything because we're in the moment, flooded with emotions and nostalgia and whatever. I'm talking about after, when you're driving home or you've hung up the phone or they finally left your apartment. Do you feel energized and uplifted? Or do you feel like you just ran a marathon through quicksand while carrying a refrigerator? The Stoics had this wild concept called sympathia, the idea that we're all connected, that we affect each other's energy and well-being, which sounds beautiful until you realize it means toxic people aren't just annoying, they're literally draining your life force like emotional vampires. And unlike the vampires in movies, these ones don't even have the decency to be attractive or sparkle in sunlight. Epictetus taught his students to pay attention to their reactions, their internal state. He'd say, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. But here's the thing, if your automatic reaction to seeing someone's name pop up on your phone is dread, that's your mind and body screaming at you in all caps, "Danger, Will Robinson, abort mission." Let's get specific, because this is where people fool themselves. Energy drainage isn't always obvious. It's not always the friend who calls at midnight crying about the same situationship for the 100th time, though yeah, that counts. Sometimes it's subtle. It's the colleague who leaves you feeling vaguely anxious after every conversation, even though nothing bad happened. It's the family member whose presence makes you feel like you're performing in a play where everyone knows the script except you. It's the partner who's technically nice, but somehow you feel more alone with them than when you're actually alone. Here's where the Stoic framework gets really useful. Seneca wrote extensively about vita activa versus vita contemplativa, the active life versus the contemplative life. The idea being that some activities and people energize us, move us toward our best selves, while others deplete us, drag us into chaos. The Stoics weren't about avoiding all discomfort. They literally practiced voluntary hardship. But they were absolutely about avoiding people and situations that made them worse versions of themselves for no good reason. And let's address the elephant in the room. But they're going through a tough time. Yeah, and we're all going through tough times. Life is a tough time interrupted by brief moments of not tough time. The question isn't whether someone's struggling, it's whether the relationship has become a one-way street where you're the designated emotional dumping ground and they're the truck backing up at full speed. The Stoics made a distinction between caring for someone and carrying someone. You can care deeply about someone's well-being while also recognizing that you cannot and should not sacrifice your own mental health at the altar of their inability to help themselves. Marcus Aurelius cared about Rome, but he didn't let his care destroy him. He set up systems, delegated, and knew when to step back. Revolutionary concept, I know. Here's the really sneaky part about energy vampires. They're often not malicious. Sometimes the most draining people in our lives are just black holes of need.
They don't mean to suck up all your energy, they just do it naturally, like breathing. And that almost makes it worse, because you feel guilty for being exhausted by someone who doesn't mean any harm. But intention doesn't negate impact. If someone accidentally backs their car into yours, the car is still damaged regardless of their intent. Think about it this way. The Stoics were big on return on investment. They'd ask, what am I getting from this interaction? Is it making me a better person? Is it teaching me something valuable? Is it bringing mutual joy and growth? If the answer is consistently, I'm getting a stress headache and the overwhelming urge to fake my own death and move to a different country, that's data. Listen to it. And here's the kicker. Some people will weaponize your empathy. They'll sense that you're a giver, a helper, a fixer, and they'll position themselves in your life like a full-time job you didn't apply for. Suddenly, you're managing their emotions, solving their problems, talking them through the same crisis on loop, and your own life is gathering dust in the corner like a forgotten houseplant. Seneca wrote, "The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable." But you know what else makes you miserable? Being anxious about a present person who consistently leaves you feeling worse than before you encountered them. That's not philosophy, that's just math. So if your energy is getting drained faster than your phone battery on 1%, buckle up, because sign number 3 is about to hit different. We're talking about respect, or more accurately, the complete and utter absence of it.
Sign number 3. Respect is a foreign concept, like they're tourists in decency and forgot their passport. Let's get one thing straight right out of the gate. Respect isn't this abstract philosophical concept that requires years of meditation to understand. It's actually pretty simple. Respect means treating someone like their thoughts, feelings, and existence matter. Wild, I know. Groundbreaking stuff. And yet somehow, some people navigate life like respect is an optional DLC they never downloaded. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, were obsessed with human dignity. He wrote, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize?" Beautiful sentiment, but here's what Marcus also understood. There's a massive difference between finding fault and recognizing when someone fundamentally doesn't respect you as a human being. One is growth, the other is survival. Disrespect comes in flavors like ice cream, except all the flavors taste like garbage. There's the obvious kind, name-calling, public humiliation, mocking your dreams, dismissing your feelings. That's Rocky Road garbage flavor. But then there's the subtle kind, the artisanal garbage, the eye rolls when you're talking, the interruptions, the way they talk over you in group settings, how they minimize your achievements while celebrating their own, the passive-aggressive comments disguised as jokes. Here's where it gets interesting from a Stoic perspective. Epictetus taught that we should focus only on what's in our control. You can't control if someone respects you, but, and this is huge, you absolutely can control whether you demand respect as a baseline requirement for your presence. That's not arrogance, that's self-preservation. Let me paint you a picture. You're sharing something important to you, maybe a goal you're working toward or a challenge you're facing, and this person, they're scrolling through their phone, or they cut you off mid-sentence to talk about themselves, or they hit you with the classic, "That's nice," in a tone that clearly communicates it is in fact not nice and they could not care less. That's not someone having an off day, that's someone showing you exactly how much they value you, and the answer is not much. The Stoics had this concept called oikeiosis, the idea that we naturally form bonds and circles of concern, starting with ourselves and expanding outward. But here's the thing they also understood. Not everyone deserves a spot in your inner circle. Some people belong in the people I acknowledge exist circle, way out there in the distance where they can do no damage. And let's talk about the respect-respect dynamic, because this is where people get twisted up. You might respect someone's skills, their intelligence, their accomplishments, and that can keep you tethered to them even when they disrespect you personally. But they're so talented, but they're so smart. Cool. Lots of talented, smart people in the world. Most of them won't make you feel like you're 2 inches tall every time you interact. The Stoics would call this a category error.
conflating someone's abilities with their character. Marcus Aurelius literally worked with some of the most accomplished people in Rome, and he still wrote about how many of them were moral disasters. Here's a fun exercise. Count how many times this person has genuinely apologized to you versus how many times they've hurt you. Not the "I'm sorry you feel that way" non-apology. Not the "I'm sorry but" apology that's just an excuse in disguise. A real, actual, "I messed up. I understand why that hurt you, and I'm going to do better" apology. If you're drawing a blank, that's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Seneca wrote about how we should value people who improve us, who challenge us to be better. But he also wrote, and this part gets left out of the Instagram quotes, about cutting off relationships that poison us. He literally said, "Cherish those who love you and leave those who don't." Pretty straightforward for a guy in a toga. The really messed up part about disrespect is how it's often gradual. It's like gaining weight. You don't notice it day by day, but then one day you look back at photos from 2 years ago and go, oh no. The first disrespectful comment might shock you. The 10th one, you're making excuses for them. By the 50th, you've normalized it so completely that you don't even register it anymore. That's not adaptation. That's erosion. And here's what nobody tells you. Teaching someone to respect you who fundamentally doesn't is like teaching a cat to bark. Sure, theoretically possible with enough time and questionable methods, but why? Why is that your project? Why are you out here running a respect rehabilitation center for one person who should have learned this stuff in kindergarten? The Stoics believed in human potential, in our capacity for growth and change. But they also believed in recognizing reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. Marcus Aurelius called it objective reality. If someone has shown you through consistent action that they don't respect you, believing they'll suddenly change is hope, not strategy, and hope without evidence is just denial wearing a party hat. But here's the thing about disrespect. It rarely travels alone. It usually brings its toxic friend manipulation to the party. And oh boy, sign number 4 is about to expose how that game gets played.
Sign number 4. Manipulation is their second language, and they're fluent. Okay, buckle up for this one because we're about to venture into the psychological warfare zone, and it's going to get uncomfortable. Manipulation is like carbon monoxide. You can't see it, can't smell it, but it'll absolutely destroy you if you don't get out fast enough. And the wild part? The people doing it often don't even realize they're doing it. They've been running the same plays for so long, it's just muscle memory at this point. The Stoics had a fascinating take on manipulation. Epictetus straight up said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And what's manipulation if not someone else trying to be master of you? It's the ultimate violation of autonomy, the antithesis of everything Stoic philosophy stands for. Because here's the deal. Stoicism is about clear thinking, rational decision-making, and maintaining your agency. Manipulation is about clouding your judgment, controlling your decisions, and hijacking your agency. Let's break down what manipulation actually looks like, because it's sneakier than a cat at 3 a.m. There's gaslighting, where they make you question your own reality so much you'd fail a test on your own life. That never happened. You're remembering wrong. You're too sensitive. There's guilt tripping, where they make you feel responsible for their emotions, their choices, their entire existence. If you really loved me, you'd, after everything I've done for you, I guess I'll just deal with this alone then. Then there's the classic triangulation, bringing other people into the conflict to make you feel isolated or wrong. Well, everyone else thinks you're overreacting. I talked to so-and-so and they agree with me. Cool story, but we're not putting relationship issues up for a popular vote. This isn't American Idol. Here's where the Stoic framework becomes your best friend. Marcus Aurelius was obsessed with discernment, with seeing things clearly without the fog of emotion or manipulation. He'd look at situations and ask, what is this essentially? Strip away the drama, the guilt, the emotional manipulation. What are you actually dealing with? Usually, it's someone trying to control you because they can't control themselves. Seneca wrote about how we should guard our minds like we guard our homes.
You wouldn't let a thief waltz into your house and start rearranging furniture, right? So why let someone waltz into your psyche and start rearranging your reality? Every time you accept a manipulative statement as truth, every time you let guilt override your judgment, you're handing over the keys to your mental fortress. And let's talk about the manipulation that disguises itself as care. I'm only saying this because I care about you. I'm just worried about you. I'm trying to help. Meanwhile, their help looks suspiciously like control. Their concern sounds a lot like criticism. Their care feels weirdly like a cage. The Stoics would call this out immediately because they understood that genuine care respects autonomy. Fake care demands compliance. Here's a thought experiment. If you removed all the emotional weight, all the history, all the "but they usually mean well" qualifications, and just looked at their actions as if they were coming from a stranger, would you tolerate it? Would you accept a stranger making you feel guilty for having boundaries? Would you let a random person on the street question your reality and make you feel crazy? No? Then why is it okay when it comes from someone you know? The really insidious thing about manipulation is how it makes you doubt yourself. Suddenly, you're second-guessing everything. Am I being unreasonable? Maybe I am too sensitive. Perhaps I did misremember. You're so busy questioning your own perception that you never get around to questioning theirs. That's by design. That's the whole point. Epictetus had this brilliant concept. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. But what do you have to do when someone's constantly trying to rewrite who you are, when they're projecting their insecurities onto you, gaslighting you about your own experiences, guilt-tripping you into compliance? You leave. That's what you have to do. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Manipulators often have a story. They've been through trauma. They've been hurt. They're dealing with their own issues. And yes, all of that can be true. But, and this is critical, someone's pain doesn't give them a free pass to transfer that pain to you. The Stoics were big on this. Understanding context doesn't mean accepting harm. You can have compassion for someone's struggles while also refusing to be their punching bag. Marcus Aurelius dealt with some of the most manipulative people imaginable. Politicians, generals, family members all vying for power and using every trick in the book. And you know what he did? He developed such strong internal clarity that their games couldn't touch him. He'd see the manipulation for what it was, respond from a place of principle, and keep it moving. He didn't get sucked into their drama. He didn't let their tactics reshape his reality. The test is simple. After interactions with this person, do you feel more confused or more clear? Do you feel more confident in your perspective or more doubtful? Do you feel empowered or diminished? Genuine relationships might challenge you, might present different viewpoints, but they don't leave you feeling like you're losing your grip on reality. That's not growth. That's psychological demolition. And let's address the "but maybe I'm being manipulative by leaving" thought, because it'll cross your mind. It's not manipulation to protect yourself. It's not manipulation to enforce consequences for harmful behavior. It's not manipulation to say, "this isn't working for me and I'm out." That's just boundaries, choices, self-preservation. The manipulator will try to make you feel guilty for leaving, will probably accuse you of being the manipulative one. That's just the final play in their playbook. Don't fall for it. Now, if manipulation is the weapon, then lack of accountability is the shield they hide behind. And oh man, sign number 5 is about to reveal how some people treat responsibility like it's a game of hot potato.
Sign number 5. Accountability is a mythical creature they've heard about, but never actually seen. Let's talk about accountability, or more specifically, the absolute vacuum where accountability should be. We're talking about people who navigate life like they're made of Teflon. Nothing sticks, nothing's ever their fault, and somehow, miraculously, they're always the victim of circumstances completely beyond their control. It's honestly impressive, in the way a house fire is impressive. Like, technically a lot is happening, but none of it is good. The Stoics were absolutely militant about personal responsibility. Epictetus basically built his entire philosophy on the idea that we're responsible for our choices, our reactions, our character. He'd say, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. But what do you do with someone who won't even acknowledge their actions, let alone take responsibility for them?
You can't build anything solid with someone who refuses to own their part. Here's what lack of accountability looks like in practice, and I want you to really pay attention because it's everywhere. They mess up, hurt you, cross a line, and somehow by the end of the conversation, you're the one apologizing. Wizardry, honestly. They'll deploy every deflection tactic known to humanity. You made me do it. I wouldn't have reacted that way if you hadn't. Yeah, but what about that time you? Before you know it, you're defending yourself for their mistake. That's not a conversation, that's a magic trick. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Simple, right? But it requires something fundamental, the ability to look at yourself honestly, recognize your flaws, and work on them. People who refuse accountability can't do step one. They can't look at themselves honestly because they're too busy constructing elaborate narratives where they're always right, always justified, always the hero or the victim, but never the villain. And let's be real about what this does to a relationship. Any relationship, romantic, friendship, family, whatever. Without accountability, there's no growth, there's no resolution, there's no trust. Because how can you trust someone who will never, ever admit they're wrong? How can you resolve conflicts with someone who refuses to acknowledge their contribution to them? You can't. You're basically trying to play chess with someone who keeps insisting the pieces are moving themselves. Here's the thing the Stoics understood that we keep forgetting. Mistakes aren't the problem. We all mess up. We all say the wrong thing, make the wrong call, hurt people we care about. That's called being human. The problem is what you do after the mess up. Do you own it? Do you genuinely apologize? Do you take steps to do better? Or do you deny, deflect, and blame shift like you're competing in the Olympic avoidance games? Seneca had this great line, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." But the polishing requires acknowledging there's rough edges to begin with. Someone who refuses accountability is essentially saying, "I'm already perfect, and any evidence to the contrary is everyone else's problem." That's not confidence, that's delusion with a superiority complex. Let me give you a concrete example, because I know someone reading this is thinking, but what if they just have a different perspective? Cool, perspectives are great, but there's a difference between "I see this situation differently" and "I reject objective reality and substitute my own." If they broke a promise, they broke a promise. If they said something hurtful, they said something hurtful. Those are facts, not perspectives. Their feelings about those facts don't change the facts. And here's where it gets really twisted. People who avoid accountability are often master storytellers. They'll rewrite history so convincingly that you'll start doubting your own memory. That's not what happened. You're exaggerating. It wasn't that bad. Suddenly you're questioning everything, pulling up old texts to verify reality, asking mutual friends if they remember things the way you do. That's exhausting. That's not a relationship. That's an investigation. The Stoics practiced what they called the view from above, stepping back to see situations objectively without the distortion of ego or emotion. Try that with this person. If a neutral third party watched your interactions, what would they see? Would they see someone taking responsibility for their actions, or would they see someone performing Olympic-level gymnastics to avoid admitting fault? Here's your litmus test. Think about the last 5 conflicts or issues you've had with this person. In how many of those did they genuinely take responsibility for their part, without deflecting, without "but you also," without making excuses? If the answer is 0, you're not dealing with someone who occasionally struggles with accountability. You're dealing with someone who fundamentally is allergic to it. And before you say, "Maybe I should just communicate better," stop. You're not a hostage negotiator. You're not responsible for finding the magic combination of words that will suddenly make someone care about their impact on others. The Stoics believed in meeting people where they are. If someone is consistently showing you they won't take accountability, believe them. They're telling you exactly who they are. You're just hoping the subtitle translation is wrong. Marcus Aurelius had to deal with people who screwed up constantly, generals who lost battles, administrators who mismanaged provinces, advisors who gave terrible counsel. And you know what separated the ones he kept around from the ones he didn't? Ownership. The ability to say, "I messed up, here's how, here's why, here's what I'll do differently." The ones who couldn't do that, they didn't last. The brutal truth is this: a relationship without accountability is a relationship without safety.
Because if someone won't own their mistakes, they'll just keep making them. They'll keep hurting you in the same ways, having the same conflicts, breaking the same promises, and somehow you'll end up feeling like you're the problem for noticing the pattern. Speaking of patterns, if someone can't own their mistakes, they're probably also experts at making everything about them. And that brings us to sign number 6, where we're diving into the Narcissism Olympics.
Sign number 6. Every conversation is a monologue and you're just the audience they didn't sell tickets to. All right, let's talk about conversational narcissism, because it's one of those things that seems small until you realize you haven't finished a sentence in 6 months. We're talking about people who treat conversations like solo performances, where you're simultaneously the captive audience, the unpaid therapist, and the emotional support system, but never, ever the person who also has thoughts, feelings, or experiences worth discussing. The Stoics were big on reciprocity and mutual respect in relationships. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about how we're social creatures, designed to work together, support each other, exist in community. But here's what he also understood. Community requires mutual contribution. When one person is taking up all the oxygen in the room, that's not community. That's a hostage situation with better lighting. Here's how you know you're dealing with this. You start to share something, maybe a challenge you're facing, an achievement you're proud of, literally anything about your life, and within 30 seconds, max, they've redirected the conversation back to themselves. Oh, that reminds me of that's nothing compared to what I'm dealing with. Yeah, but have you heard about It's like playing conversational tennis, except they serve every ball and you're just standing there with a racket wondering if the game started yet. Epictetus taught about the importance of listening, of truly hearing others. He understood that wisdom comes from paying attention, from being present with people. But these conversational narcissists, they're not listening to understand. They're listening for their cue, for the brief pause where they can jump in and redirect everything back to their favorite topic, themselves. And let's break down the subtypes here, because it's not always obvious. There's the competitor. Everything you've done, they've done better. Everything you're going through, they've had it worse. You got a promotion, they got 3. You're tired, they haven't slept in weeks. You discovered a new restaurant, they've been going there since before it was cool and actually know the chef personally. It's exhausting. Then there's the crisis generator. There's always a new emergency, a new drama, a new catastrophe that requires immediate and total attention. Your stuff can wait because their world is perpetually on fire. Except, is it? Or have they just discovered that manufacturing crises is an excellent way to monopolize attention? And don't forget the advisor. They can't just listen. They have to fix, suggest, instruct, mansplain or womansplain, or just plain explain things you already know. You're not looking for solutions. You're just trying to share. But they can't handle just being present, because that would require acknowledging that the conversation isn't about their wisdom, knowledge, or superiority. The Stoics practiced what they called prosoch, attention, focus, presence, being fully engaged with the moment and the people in it. But you can't practice presence with someone who's never actually present with you. They're already 3 topics ahead, waiting for their turn to talk, mentally rehearsing their next story, completely disconnected from what you're actually saying. Here's the test. When's the last time this person asked you a follow-up question? Not a surface level, how are you, that's just social lubrication. A real question. How did that make you feel? What happened next? What are you going to do? If you're drawing a blank, that's not because you haven't had interesting things happening in your life. It's because they haven't noticed or cared enough to ask. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I'm about to criticize?" But here's the thing. Wanting to be heard isn't a fault. Expecting reciprocity in conversations isn't selfish. The Stoics believed in self-examination, but they also believed in recognizing when you're dealing with someone who's fundamentally incapable of seeing beyond themselves. And let's address the sneaky justification that might be running through your head. But they're going through a lot. Sure, okay, we all go through things, but going through a rough patch doesn't give someone a lifetime pass to treat every interaction like their personal therapy session, while you're the unpaid therapist who also does life coaching on the side. Seneca wrote about how we should be generous with our time and attention, but he also wrote about not being a doormat.
There's a line between being a good friend and being an emotional landfill. The Stoics were all about discernment, knowing the difference. Here's what really gets me about conversational narcissists. They'll often accuse you of not caring when you finally can't take it anymore. You pull back, stop sharing, stop engaging as enthusiastically, and suddenly you're the problem. You never tell me anything anymore. You're being distant. Yeah, because talking to you is like shouting into a void that occasionally yells about its own problems. It's not distance, it's self-preservation. The wild part is how this behavior patterns your responses. You start self-editing before you even speak. Is this worth bringing up? Will they care, or will they just use it as a springboard to talk about themselves? You're doing conversational cost-benefit analysis in real time, and that's not a relationship. That's a hostage negotiation. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This person apparently missed that memo and is operating on a 1 ear, 2 mouths model. They've turned conversations into performances, relationships into audiences, and you into an unpaid supporting character in the movie of their life. And here's the kicker. This isn't about being charismatic or being a good storyteller. Plenty of people are engaging speakers who also know how to listen, ask questions, and make space for others. This is about someone who's so consumed with their own narrative that everyone else is reduced to extras who occasionally get a line if they're lucky. The Stoics believed in mutual flourishing, the idea that relationships should elevate everyone involved. But you can't flourish in the shadow of someone who takes up all the light. You can't grow in a relationship where you're perpetually pruned to make room for someone else's endless expansion. But you know what's even more fun than being ignored in conversations? Being actively put down while being ignored. And that sweet combination brings us to sign number 7, where we explore how some people have turned criticism into a full-contact sport.
Sign number 7. They've turned criticism into an Olympic sport, and you're the target range. Let's dive into something truly special. People who criticize you with the dedication of a professional athlete training for the Olympics. We're talking about folks who can find fault in a perfect sunset, who could criticize a puppy, who look at your wins and immediately start listing what's wrong with them. It's a talent, really, a terrible, soul-crushing talent. The Stoics understood criticism in a nuanced way. Marcus Aurelius actually welcomed legitimate critique because he knew it could make him better. He'd actively seek out people who would tell him hard truths. But, and this is massive, he distinguished between constructive criticism that comes from wisdom and care versus destructive criticism that comes from insecurity and spite. One builds you up while challenging you. The other just tears you down. Here's how you know the difference. Constructive criticism is specific, actionable, and delivered with respect. Hey, I noticed you interrupted a few times in that meeting. Maybe try waiting a beat before jumping in. That's helpful. Destructive criticism is vague, overwhelming, and delivered with judgment. You're always so rude and inconsiderate, you never think about anyone but yourself. That's not help. That's an attack wearing a feedback costume. Epictetus taught that we should focus on what we can control and let go of what we can't. But when you're dealing with someone who's constantly criticizing you, they're essentially trying to control you through shame and judgment. They're weaponizing your desire to improve, to be better, to be worthy, and turning it against you. And let's talk about the different flavors of chronic critics, because they're not all identical. There's the perfectionist. Nothing you do is ever quite good enough. You got a 98 on the test? Why not 100? You cleaned the house? Why didn't you also organize the garage? You made dinner? It's good, but they make it differently. Read better. Moving the goalposts is their cardio. Then there's the backhanded complimenter, masters of the compliment-insult hybrid. You look great. Did you finally start taking care of yourself? Wow, you're actually on time for once. Good job. I'm surprised you pulled it off. Every positive comes pre-packaged with a negative, like a Trojan horse of toxicity. Don't forget the public critic. They'll tear you down in front of others because there's something about an audience that really gets their engine going. They'll make little digs at dinner parties, playfully mock you in group chats, share your failures as funny stories. And if you call them out, it's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive. Marcus Aurelius dealt with critics constantly. He was the Roman emperor, for crying out loud. But he had a filter. Is this person criticizing me to help me become better or to make themselves feel superior? Is this coming from wisdom and care or from insecurity and cruelty?
One type of criticism he'd consider, the other he'd let slide off like water off a duck's back. Here's your gut check. After this person criticizes you, do you feel motivated to improve, or do you feel diminished, inadequate, like you can't do anything right? Real feedback energizes you, even when it's hard to hear. Toxic criticism paralyzes you, makes you second-guess everything, leaves you feeling like you're fundamentally flawed.
Seneca wrote about how we should be like fire, warmth and light to those around us. But some people are like those trick candles that reignite when you try to blow them out, except instead of flames, it's criticism. You address one concern, and they've got 5 more ready to go. It's never ending because the criticism isn't really about you or your behavior. It's about their need to feel superior, to control, to keep you off balance. And here's the truly insidious part. Chronic critics will convince you that they're just trying to help. They'll frame their relentless negativity as concern. I'm only pointing this out because I care about you. But care doesn't feel like 1,000 cuts. Care doesn't leave you feeling like you're perpetually failing an exam you didn't know you were taking. The Stoics practiced self-examination, rigorous self-examination. Marcus Aurelius would literally list his own faults in his meditations. But here's what he didn't do. He didn't accept criticism from people who clearly had their own agenda, who were trying to manipulate him, who were more interested in tearing him down than building Rome up. He had discernment. We need that too. Think about it. Is their criticism balanced? Do they ever praise you, acknowledge your strengths, recognize your efforts, or is it just a steady stream of not good enough in various formulations? If it's all negative all the time, that's not feedback. That's conditioning. They're training you to believe you're inadequate so you'll stay small, stay controllable, stay in their orbit trying to earn approval you'll never receive. Epictetus said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" Savage. But the underlying wisdom is, don't let others' criticisms define your self-worth, especially when those criticisms are more about them than you. Here's the reality check you need. People who genuinely care about you will absolutely give you feedback when necessary, but it won't be constant, it won't be cruel, it won't leave you feeling worthless. It'll be balanced with recognition of your strengths. It'll be specific and actionable. It'll be delivered with love, not judgment. Everything else? That's just someone working out their own issues using your self-esteem as a punching bag. The Stoics believed we should accept feedback gracefully and use it to improve, but they also believed in recognizing when someone is being unreasonable, unfair, or unkind. Marcus Aurelius wrote about dealing with difficult people by remembering they're acting from their own nature, but he didn't say you have to stick around and let them pummel you with their nature. Understanding why someone's toxic doesn't obligate you to tolerate the toxicity. Now, if constant criticism is bad, you know what makes it worse? When that person also refuses to celebrate your wins. And that perfect storm of negativity brings us to sign number 8, where we talk about the people who treat your success like a personal attack. Sign number 8. Your success makes them uncomfortable, like you won the lottery and they're allergic to money. Okay, real talk time. One of the clearest signs you need to walk away from someone is when your wins make them weird. We're not talking about friendly competition or good-natured teasing. We're talking about people who react to your success like you just told them their house is on fire. The energy shifts, the congratulations feel forced, and somehow your good news becomes about their insecurities. Fun times. The Stoics had a beautiful concept about this. Marcus Aurelius believed that virtuous people should celebrate each other's growth and success because we're all part of the same human community. When one person rises, we all benefit. But he also recognized, because he wasn't naive, that envy is real, and some people can't handle watching others thrive because it highlights everything they think they're not. Here's what this looks like in practice. You get a promotion. Their response? Must be nice, with a tone that could freeze lava. Or they immediately pivot to talking about why they deserve a promotion. Or they start listing all the reasons your promotion isn't that impressive. Well, that company promotes everyone. The work's probably easier at your level. I could have gotten promoted too if I wanted to sell out. Congratulations, your achievement just got the passive-aggressive treatment.
Epictetus taught that a Stoic should be indifferent to external success. Wealth, status, recognition, these things don't determine your character. But he also understood that it's natural to work toward goals and feel good about achieving them. The problem isn't success. The problem is being around people who can't handle your success without making it about themselves. And let's break down the subtle variations, because envious people are creative in their toxicity. There's the minimizer. They'll shrink your accomplishments. You finished a marathon? Oh, I thought about doing that, but I prefer half marathons. Full marathons are kind of overkill. You wrote a book, self-published or traditional, because anyone can self-publish. They've got a talent for finding the one angle that makes your thing seem less impressive. Then there's the competitor who wasn't competing. Suddenly everything's a contest you didn't know you entered. You share good news, and within minutes they're telling you about their achievements, their plans, their superiority. You got into grad school? Well, they were accepted to 3 programs. You bought a house? Theirs is bigger. You're happy? They're ecstatic. It's exhausting. Don't sleep on the future forecaster. They can't let you enjoy the moment because they're too busy predicting your downfall. That's great, but wait until you see how much work it is. New relationships always start out exciting. Give it time. Sure, the business is doing well now, but most fail within 5 years. Thanks for the optimism, Captain Sunshine. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions." But what about the worth of people who can't celebrate your ambitions? The Stoics understood that surrounding yourself with people who elevate you, who genuinely want to see you succeed, is crucial. Not because you need validation, Stoics aren't about external validation, but because life is hard enough without adding people who actively root against you. And here's the thing that'll really bake your noodle. These are often people who claim to love you, family, old friends, partners, and they probably do in some twisted way, but their love is conditional on you staying at their level or below. The minute you start to outgrow them, to achieve things they haven't, to step into your potential, that love gets real complicated real fast. Seneca wrote extensively about envy, calling it one of the most destructive emotions. He said envious people are tormented not only by their own failures, but others' success. And here's the brutal truth. You can't fix that for them. You can't dim your light to make them comfortable. You can't achieve less to preserve their ego. That's not love. That's codependency with a superiority complex. Let me give you a practical test. Think about the last time you shared genuinely good news with this person. Did they ask follow-up questions? Did they seem excited for you? Did they celebrate with you? Or did they immediately redirect to themselves, minimize it, or predict failure? Your gut knows the answer. Your gut's been trying to tell you for a while now. Epictetus practiced something called sympathetic joy, genuinely feeling happy for others' good fortune. It's the opposite of envy, the antidote to comparison. Marcus Aurelius would actively practice being happy for his general's victories, his administrator's successes, his family's achievements. But he also knew that not everyone has that capacity, and that's data, not a challenge. And before you think, maybe they're just having a hard time right now. Okay, cool. People go through rough patches. But there's a difference between someone who's struggling and temporarily can't muster enthusiasm versus someone who has a pattern of making your wins about their losses. One is temporary and understandable. The other is a character issue. Here's what really gets me. The people who can't celebrate you will often expect you to celebrate them. They'll share their wins and expect full enthusiasm, unwavering support, celebration, and validation. But when it's your turn, crickets. Or worse, sabotage disguised as concern. That's not a relationship. That's a one-way street where you're the traffic and they're the only destination. Epictetus would say this is about their inner diamond, their internal character and choices. You can't control whether someone chooses to be envious, competitive, or dismissive of your success, but you absolutely can control whether you keep giving them front-row seats to your life. The Stoics believed in focusing energy where it creates positive returns. Maintaining a relationship with someone who treats your success like a personal attack, negative returns, every time. You're investing emotional energy into someone who doesn't want you to grow, thrive, or succeed. That's not an investment. That's setting your energy on fire and watching it burn.
Marcus Aurelius had this incredible line: "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Don't shrink yourself to make envious people comfortable. Don't hide your success to protect their feelings. Don't apologize for thriving. Just keep growing, keep achieving, and if they can't handle it, that's information about them, not you. And now we've reached the final sign, the one that encompasses all the others and really drives home why walking away is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself. Sign number 9 is about to tie everything together in a way that's going to hit different.
All right, we've made it to the final sign, and it's the big one. The one that, if you're honest with yourself, you've probably felt but haven't wanted to name. It's this: being in this relationship requires you to betray yourself, to shrink, to silence parts of you, to pretend you're okay with things you're not okay with, to slowly, steadily, piece by piece, abandon who you actually are to maintain connection with someone who doesn't actually want the real you anyway. The Stoics were absolutely militant about self-integrity. Epictetus literally said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And what is self-betrayal if not voluntarily giving up that mastery? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But what happens when maintaining a relationship requires evacuating your soul? When peace with them means war with yourself? Here's what this looks like in granular, painful detail. You stop expressing opinions they might disagree with. You laugh at jokes you find offensive. You cancel plans you're excited about because they disapprove. You dress differently, talk differently, moderate your enthusiasm, suppress your interests, minimize your needs, apologize for your existence. You've become a hostage negotiator in your own life, constantly trying to manage their reactions, predict their moods, avoid their judgment. Seneca wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." But there's a darker version of that. To be whatever someone needs you to be means you're no one at all. When you've shape-shifted so many times to fit their requirements, their preferences, their comfort zones, you look in the mirror and don't recognize who's looking back. That's not growth, that's disappearance. And let's be crystal clear about what self-abandonment does to you. It creates this split, this internal fracture, where you're performing a version of yourself for them, while the real you is locked in the basement screaming. You know that feeling when you finally leave their presence and you can breathe again? When you don't have to monitor every word, every expression, every reaction. That relief is your soul gasping for air after being underwater too long. The Stoics practiced radical self-honesty. Marcus Aurelius would write the truth about himself, his flaws, his struggles, in his meditations, not for publication, just for himself. That level of self-awareness requires being alone with yourself, being honest with yourself. But when you're constantly performing for someone else's approval, you lose that connection. You become a stranger to yourself. Here's the test, and it's uncomfortably simple. Who are you when you're with this person? Not who you perform being, who you actually are. Can you express your real thoughts, share your genuine feelings, pursue your authentic interests? Or are you constantly editing, filtering, self-censoring, trying to be the version they'll accept? If it's the latter, you're not in a relationship. You're in a full-time acting job that doesn't pay. Epictetus taught his students to live according to their nature, their authentic self. He'd ask, "What is this essentially?" Apply that to your relationship. Essentially, stripped of all the justifications and rationalizations and, but sometimes it's good qualifiers. What is this? Is it a connection where two authentic people meet and relate? Or is it a performance where you contort yourself into whatever shape keeps the peace? And here's the really twisted part. People who require you to abandon yourself will often accuse you of being fake or changing when you finally stop doing it. When you start expressing your real opinions, setting boundaries, pursuing your interests, suddenly you're not yourself. You're not the compliant, moldable version they preferred. You're becoming yourself, and they're uncomfortable because they never actually knew you. They knew the performance.
The Stoics believed in living in accordance with virtue, with your highest self.
But your highest self cannot emerge in an environment that punishes authenticity. Marcus Aurelius wrote about being like the rock that the waves crash against, standing firm. But he wasn't talking about standing firm in toxic relationships. He was talking about standing firm in your principles, your values, your truth. Sometimes standing firm means walking away from people who require you to crumble. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a plant that needs sunlight to grow. Now imagine someone puts that plant in a dark closet and gets mad when it starts wilting. Why aren't you growing? What's wrong with you? You're so negative about this closet. That's what self-abandonment feels like. You need certain things to thrive: authenticity, respect, freedom to be yourself, and this relationship is a closet you've been told is a greenhouse. Seneca wrote about how we should guard our time like we guard our money, but the Stoics also understood we should guard our soul the same way. Every moment you spend betraying yourself for someone else's comfort is a theft. You're robbing yourself of your own life, your own experience, your own authenticity. And for what? To maintain a connection with someone who doesn't even want the real you? Here's what nobody tells you. The right people, the people worth keeping in your life, don't require you to shrink. They celebrate your expansion. They want you to be more yourself, not less. They encourage your growth, your evolution, your authentic expression. Being around them doesn't feel like walking on eggshells. It feels like coming home. The Stoics understood something profound. You can't control other people, but you can control whether you remain in situations that harm you. Marcus Aurelius couldn't make everyone in Rome virtuous, but he could choose his inner circle. He could limit his exposure to toxic people. He could walk away from relationships that required him to compromise his integrity. And let's address the guilt, because it's coming if it hasn't already. But they need me. But we have history. But I've invested so much time. Sunk cost fallacy meets martyrdom complex. The Stoics would tell you that staying in a situation out of guilt is not virtue, it's fear. Fear of change, fear of their reaction, fear of starting over, fear of being alone. But being alone is infinitely better than being lonely in the presence of someone who requires you to abandon yourself. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Your freedom to be yourself, to express yourself, to live authentically is non-negotiable. Anyone who requires you to trade that freedom for their approval is asking too high a price. The Stoics knew this. They lived this. They'd rather die free than live as slaves, even slaves to relationships. Think about the life you're living right now. The real one, not the one you tell yourself you're living. Are you free to be yourself, or are you serving a life sentence in a relationship that requires you to be someone else? If it's the latter, walking away isn't giving up on love, it's refusing to give up on yourself. Look, we've covered 9 signs, and if you're being honest with yourself, you recognized someone in at least a few of these, maybe all of them. And that recognition probably feels like a gut punch mixed with relief. Finally, someone's saying it. Finally, someone's giving you permission to trust what you already knew.
Here's the truth the Stoics understood, but we keep forgetting. Loving someone doesn't mean tolerating everything. Caring about someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself at the altar of their dysfunction. History with someone doesn't obligate you to a future with them. And walking away from someone who consistently disrespects you, drains you, manipulates you, refuses accountability, makes everything about themselves, criticizes you relentlessly, can't celebrate your success, and requires you to abandon yourself, that's not giving up. That's waking up. Marcus Aurelius dealt with betrayal, manipulation, and toxic people at the highest levels of power. And you know what he did? He responded from a place of principle, maintained his boundaries, and, when necessary, removed people from his inner circle, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. He understood that some relationships are incompatible with your well-being, and choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Epictetus was a slave who became one of the most influential philosophers in history. How? by refusing to let external circumstances, including toxic people, control his inner freedom. He couldn't control who owned him legally, but he controlled who had access to his mind, his peace, his sense of self. You have that same power. You always have. So here's your homework, and I'm dead serious about this. Think about the person or people who came to mind as you watched this. Really sit with whether this relationship is adding to your life or subtracting from it. Whether it's helping you become your best self or slowly eroding who you are. And then, and this is the hard part, act on what you know. Walking away doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need a big confrontation or a manifesto. Sometimes it's just stopping. Stopping the texts that go unanswered. Stopping the emotional labor that's never reciprocated. Stopping the justifications for behavior that needs no justification because it simply shouldn't exist. Stopping the betrayal of yourself. The Stoics believed in living according to nature, your nature. And your nature is not to be disrespected, drained, manipulated, and diminished. Your nature is to grow, to thrive, to connect authentically, to give and receive love that doesn't cost you your soul. Anything less is settling. Anything less is choosing comfort over truth. And yeah, it's gonna hurt. Walking away from people you love, or thought you loved, or wanted to love, that's painful. The Stoics didn't pretend otherwise. Marcus Aurelius wrote about loss, about grief, about the difficulty of hard choices, but he also wrote about the freedom that comes from living in alignment with your values, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So do it. Take the leap. Close the door. Block the number. End the cycle. Not because you hate them, not because you want revenge, not because you're trying to teach them a lesson. Do it because you love yourself enough to refuse anything less than respect. Do it because your peace matters. Do it because life is too short to spend it walking on eggshells around people who should be celebrating you. And when you do, when you finally choose yourself, remember what Seneca said. Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. This difficulty, this pain of walking away, it's strengthening you. It's teaching you your worth. It's showing you what you won't tolerate anymore. That's not weakness. That's evolution. If this resonated with you, if any of this hit home, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment telling me which sign hit the hardest. And more importantly, tell me what you're going to do about it. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. The Stoics weren't entertainers. They were practitioners. They lived this stuff. And so should you. Remember, you can love someone from a distance. You can wish them well without sacrificing your wellness. You can hold space for them in your heart without giving them space in your life. The Stoics understood this paradox that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of losing you. Now go. Walk away if you need to. Stay if it's genuine. But whatever you do, stop betraying yourself for people who wouldn't cross the street to honor you. Your future self is watching. Make them proud. Peace out.